Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Mary Wilson, Vice Provost Teaching and Learning at Wilfrid Laurier University. And throughout this series, I'll be joined by recipients of the Donald F. Morganson Awards for Teaching Excellence to celebrate their exceptional teaching practices, learn about their teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education, teaching, and learning. Today, I'm with Crystal Shadwell from Laurier's Faculty of Arts. Crystal received the 2021 Staff Award for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. Crystal co-created and manages the Strategies for Academic Success program, which helps students who are academically at risk get back on track and achieve their academic goals. Welcome, Crystal.
Thanks so much, Mary. I'm so excited to be here and chat today about the SAS program. Maybe that's a little easier.
Easier to say SAS. Thank you very much. That's what we can say from now on. So can you tell us a little bit about the impact that the SAS program and your work has on our students?
Definitely. The SAS program is something that I'm so proud of to be a part of. I think it's a really, unique space that we've held on campus to support our students, and is something that Laurier in and of ourselves should be proud of. We're one of only 7 programs in Canada. So working with our students when it seems like they've come to the end of the road, the students who join us in this program have been required to withdraw from their studies, but myself and my team really believe that our students are all here for a reason. So if we can give them the tools and help them establish the strategies that they need to work on life both inside and outside of the classroom, they can really overcome those challenges and find the academic success that we know that they are so capable of. So it really is an incredibly supportive program, wraparound support, supporting our students really on a journey of self-discovery and self-awareness that really fuels me as an educator to really help students have those moments and build that awareness and establish some resiliency in what they do.
It's such a consequential program for students who are unsure about their path, feeling a little bit ill-prepared for post-secondary education, or just struggling with the complexities of life. So can you talk a little bit about how you designed the experiences in the program, the structure of it, so that students have those kinds of wraparound supports that you're talking about?
Definitely. Students join us from, a variety of different life moments, right? Some have just been in their first year and are dealing with that transition and finding it overwhelming. Some are, dealing with things going on outside the classroom that are really impeding their ability to properly engage. And most times, it's a combination of all of those things. So in what we're working to do in the program is taking the students through a really intentionally scaffolded journey of let's figure out you first. Let's figure out what's going on for you, not worrying about the academic skills, but, is it that you're just not managing your time, or that maybe, the financial issues of working full-time and trying to be a full-time student are not realistic, or maybe it's something bigger. Maybe there is like a significant family circumstance or your own personal health, whether that be mental or physical health. And first starting on, let's open up a really safe space to have these conversations. And we really focus on, building a community and social learning. So the students are seeing that they're not isolated in their failures and they're not isolated in those struggles, where they can learn from each other and say, hey, we're both, I'm surprised to see. And I think that is one of the greatest moments in the program. I'm not the only one struggling with this. I'm not the only one who's feeling this way. So through what we're doing in the classroom, through what we're asking them to do also outside of the classroom, engaging with campus resources, working with campus experts, engaging with their professors in probably ways they haven't before, with all this great help that's available to them. Let's start the conversation on building that awareness, and then let's move forward to taking action on it. So what are the changes that you need to make? What are the pieces that you can make even just a little switch, and it can really have a profound impact, to then move forward of, I say, once you kind of get yourself out of the way and you're managing life with yourself a little bit more, then we can start working on, in the second semester of the program, the academic skills, the the pieces of, critically reading, because if you can read better, you can write better. If you can write better, you can probably research a little better as well. So it really is a program that spends a full year with these students, getting them to have a holistic understanding of what it takes to be a successful student, so that hopefully once they've spent that year with us, they have good awareness in what they want to study, why they want to study it, and how they're going to do their best in that space to journey on forward and find more success than how they started their journey at Laurier, whether that be, again, 1 year, 2 years. We've even had some students who finished the program and then walked across the stage at Laurier and graduated. So they find us in a variety of times in their journey.
That is brilliant. I know that for a lot of our students, it could be really difficult to know that you're challenged academically and wanting that still have that spark, that love of learning, that desire to be in post-secondary, but really be challenged by it, and being in a program that helps them to learn the effective strategies that will lead them toward greater academic success is really important. But it can also, I think, feel as though they're being remediated, which I think is a challenge for all of us. It can be difficult to focus and do that work. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with students who are worried about that stigma, and the sorts of things that you found that really help them to realize that it is a journey, that we all go through challenges, that we all struggle at some points in our academic journeys, and really need to seek the supports and help and strategies that will get us past that. The learning can be super challenging sometimes. So
well,
can you
learning
talk a
should
little
be
bit?
challenging, right?
And it should be, yes, it should be challenging as well. But for those students who are, feeling it sort of at their core, the struggle, can you talk about what helps?
Yeah. And I think it makes sense, right? That it is such a piece of your identity. If you've come in as a very successful high school student, helping our students recognize this is a different learning environment, right? There's different expectations, there's so much more independence, and what your responsibility is as a student. We talk a lot about, how do you meet your professors halfway? Right? What are you responsible to do to get that halfway point so that your professors can do their jobs and also help you be successful? And that piece of identity of, even if it's always come easily, right? We need to engage in it in a different way in this space. And again, I think the biggest thing that we talk about in this program is that you're not alone, right? We don't expect you to navigate these waters, and we don't expect you to figure it all out on your own. I always say, I don't have a job if you don't ask me for help. So please come, please engage, please be a part of the discussion, because we want to help you. We want to help you figure out, what are the classes that you're going to be the most successful in? What are the strategies and the pieces that you can use that, if something's going on outside of the classroom, how do you manage and balance that? And we really work with the students to really normalize a lot of those things. And I think that piece of normalizing it, every piece of our content in SAS 1 is something that I have researched through, whether it might be my own Master of Education or the years that I sat across from students in conversations advising, that we realized, these are the factors that are clearly, motivation, self-awareness, self-regulation, the pieces that are impacting our students' ability to reach their full potential. So by presenting them in a way of saying, hey, this is normal, what's your situation with this? How have you experienced and encountered difficulties with this piece? And then being able to have discussions with classmates to, again, kind of brainstorm and strategize, and letting them see, again, that it's okay to feel this way, but then what do you do on the other side to take action on that? Again, you're not in it alone. So how can we normalize? How can we really encourage our students to not be afraid to reach out for asking for help, not waiting to the point that it's gone wrong, but when it's starting to not feel comfortable, there's such incredible resources on our campus, even beyond our campus, that can, how do you loop your family into this conversation? How do you help them understand what you're experiencing and what you're going through? So I think that piece of normalizing the conversation, making it a little bit more comfortable to open up and engage and ask for help, I think really helps the identity piece for these students, because it's true. When they come in on day one, they don't want to be there, right? There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of embarrassment, and whether it be our virtual classroom or our in-person classroom, it's always profound to me how much you can just feel the tension dissipate when they realize, like, okay, I'm in a space where we're going to acknowledge this failure, but we're going to overcome it and we're going to be better because of it, right? I always use the analogy of an arrow doesn't go forward if it doesn't get pulled back first on our first day of class, right? So we have to get pulled back sometimes to go even further than we expected. And a lot of our, I'd say all of our students talk about the fact that had they not gone through this bump in the road, they're now further ahead than they otherwise would have been by engaging and participating in what we were doing.
So it's a really unique group of students at a particularly challenging time in their personal development. And it matters enormously that once we commit to bringing these students into Laurier, that we are also committed to their continued success. Because their experience in university provides them access to the kinds of powerful knowledge that allow them to participate fully as citizens, to be good neighbors, to be good thinkers, to contribute to society, to reach success in their professional work and their ambitions, to live well-rounded, fulfilling lives, to have that kind of curiosity that drives our intellectual development over time. So I can hear from what you're saying that you work really hard to get them to the point where they can embrace that and appreciate it and feel as though they are going to be successful with some focused attention on developing some skills. So you probably use very distinctive teaching approaches or are motivated by very specific beliefs about teaching practice. Can you talk about what you've sort of acquired as a philosophy of teaching as a consequence of working with these students?
I would say that I guess I describe my teaching as retention focused teaching, right? So I love the fact that you talked about the fact that we do have a responsibility and right to help these students. We've brought them in, so let's keep them here because they're here for a reason. And whether it be through the SAS program or now the offshoots that I'm working on for other at-risk groups, right? It is all around this retention focused teaching. And my biggest motivator, I would say that I've, myself as a student, now as an educator as well, I always found the biggest impact when I had an experiential piece that it related to me as a human, right? Where I was able to immerse myself in the learning, not just be learning something that I was disconnected from, but I actually had lived experience with. So we really, in the classroom, bring in a lot of reflective learning for that space, right? So that, again, I'm not just telling you, students who are more motivated are going to be more successful, but what does it take to be motivated? What does it look like when you're not motivated? And then how does that manifest for you? So I think reflective teaching is definitely a huge part of our pedagogy, where the students are going through a conversation and then stepping back to say, okay, then how does this relate to me? Creating on also a great social learning experience. We do a lot of active learning. We do a lot of in-class discussions. We have the great fortune of teaching these classes in our active learning classroom at Laurier, where they're sitting in round tables with peers, workshopping, talking, discussing, right? So a lot of social learning as well. And then I would say like that piece of intentionally scaffolding our learning as well, right? So that you're able to kind of keep building on these pieces and seeing yourself develop kind of a whole identity of what it takes to be a successful student and taking the pieces of the puzzle that we present to put them together for you. So, when I was doing my MEd, when John Dewey talked about the importance of experiential learning, I was like, yes, right? The students have to see themselves in it. They have to like immerse and be a part of it. And then participating in my MEd where everything was bringing, theory to my own practice. I joke that I almost built SAS around how the MEd presented learning to us, like theory to practice, but for them, theory to their lived experience, right? So having that piece of connecting it again to what's actually real for them and what's actually happened, so that it's not just living in that moment, but I may present something today that you don't think relates to you, right? You may not be dealing with this particular circumstance of finances today, but in a semester or a year from now, or even later in life when you've graduated, you can come up against these moments and say, hey, I remember this strategy, this tool, this, conversation that we had, and I still have tools that I can kind of lean back on because of the fact that I heard from my peers the impact that it had, and I was able to see in my classmates in that space, what that looked like. So I think also intentionally scaffolding that right now you have all these puzzle pieces, you're going to take what you need, but you have a whole now tool belt to keep leaning on and to keep drawing on as your situation evolves, because it's going to, right? We don't want to just say you're successful now that you're healthy, because something else is going to come up and life is going to keep getting in the way. So how do you balance and how do you manage that? I am known for saying that life is bigger than school, right? So I want my students to know that there's going to be circumstances that keep coming up. So what are the the strategies we can keep establishing with them?
So do you find that students in the SAS program are really curious to understand the why behind the strategies that you're recommending? Like if you're talking about the Pomodoro technique, or you're talking about the importance of sleep or repeated practice, do they want to know about the physiology of learning, about the processes of learning? Are they curious about that as well?
I think in the moment, it's even just the strategy itself is eye-opening to them, right? So I think that in the moment, they really just like, it's this information of, wow, like had I made, how to use the Pomodoro technique. We talk about eat the frog a lot in SAS, right? Like,
yeah,
so
eat the frog, yes.
Yeah. So
you should say what eat the frog means, so
that's true.
The audience knows.
Yes. So eating the frog, when you have a long to-do list, you look at what is the biggest, most ugly, the thing that you are avoiding the most.
Obnoxious.
Yeah. So no putting off the eating of the frog. You've got to eat it first, get it done, and then get to everything else. So I think when they're in the first term of the program, it really is just this like relief of, oh, there is something I could be doing different. Right. And then as they spend more time in the program with us in term 2, and we're leaning back on the term 1 strategies, that's when there's more of that why, right? That's when, again, you've made a quick fix, but how does that become sustainable change, right? That's when we get into more of those conversations and take it a little deeper, where you can't just take these things for granted because you made a schedule once and it worked. You have to keep making the schedule. You have to keep doing the intentional work to find the motivation in, I talk a lot about the just do something principle. So, right, how do you keep that going? And I say, I may be standing on this side of the classroom teaching you this, but every week I too sit with my 4 quadrants of prioritization and have to think about my week that way. It's never something you just stop doing. So yeah, I think that they definitely do get to that point so they can have more sustained change and form it into a habit, as opposed to just, okay, I see that made a difference, but how can it continue making that impact?
And it certainly does make a difference for our students. And I'm so glad that we have structured opportunities for them to learn how to do this in community and with a caring educator who's present as well. So let's talk a little bit about the future of it and what you see coming forward. So our students who are entering into undergraduate now and potentially for the next little while will have had a different experience, a disrupted experience. And I think some disappointments with some of the expectations and rituals and events that you seek to celebrate in your secondary education and are now coming to join us in post-secondary. If you could offer them some advice or wisdom, what would you share with them?
So it's been really great to be able to take the learning that we've, had in SAS in the 6 years of this program and think about how can we repackage it to then give it to other groups, like I mentioned. So I'll talk first maybe to our incoming Laurier students specifically, right? So in the Faculty of Arts, we launched a first-year course because the SAS students are always saying, had you told me this in first year, it would have made such a big difference. I believe, though, sometimes you're not ready to hear the information until you realize that you need that information, right? We give our first year students a ton of information, but sometimes are they ready, right, to know that it is going to be harder to manage your time, and it is going to be harder to, take notes in a different kind of style of lecture. So I appreciate when my SAS students say that, but we still took that learning, and we've created this first year course for Faculty of Arts students where we're going through the same kind of strategies, right? So how do you manage your time? How is high school different than university? And, you wrote a paper that was maybe the hamburger paper, right? Your intro, your body,
Yeah.
right? But in university, how that's going to be expected to be different and evolve, right? So we do a lot of that work in that course. So I think to our incoming students, like, seek out those opportunities, right? What is there for you that you don't have to make the mistake and then fix it? Is there any way that you can proactively have the information, right? And there are, I'm sure, an overwhelming amount of resources available to you, which can feel at times like, where do I even begin? So don't be afraid to seek out the opportunities, and B, just start somewhere asking for that help, right? Even if you're not sure you're asking the right person. Again, a big thing for me is that you're not in this alone. So you shouldn't feel like you have to come into university being an adult, having it all figured out, knowing you've had a disrupted learning experience, knowing that this first year is going to look a little different than maybe you always anticipated that it would. So how can you, again, as I said, we're not here if you don't ask us for help, right? There's so many of us eager and waiting and wanting to provide that help. So if you're finding whatever it is challenging, keeping up with your readings, managing your time, just dealing with the homesickness of this new environment and this new space that's your home away from home, right? Start the conversation with someone, right? Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, because even if that's not the right person to maybe who can remedy that and can give you the strategies, they probably know someone who can. So really lean into this community. Laurier is an incredible one. I did my own undergrad here 100 years ago and have never left, coming up to, I guess now, 10 years as an employee with 5 years of an undergrad. So a lot of Laurier love, and that community really does want to wrap around you as a every year student, but especially with our first years, to get you off on the right track. So reach out, ask for help, and know that you're not in it alone, and be open to things you don't expect, because there's a lot of really cool opportunities waiting for you.
I think that is brilliant, Crystal. I absolutely want our students to know that the supports and resources, the community that surrounds them, are waiting to engage with them, and that, our very best students, as well as our students who are struggling academically, should all be taking advantage of those enrichment opportunities and engagement opportunities that we have in place across the university. It's so important that we help students to not be Q deaf in a Q rich environment, about all of the ways in which you can learn to learn in post-secondary and be more successful and enjoy the journey more because of that. My thanks to Crystal Shadwell for joining me in conversations today, and to you for joining us to celebrate teaching excellence and student success. I hope you'll join me again in the next conversation as I continue to celebrate our award recipients and highlight exceptional teaching at Laurier. Thank you so much.